All right, buonasera, good evening. It's your boy Big Rich, Sunday Night Business. You know what that means? Ndrangheta Weekly News, the only platform on YouTube to bring you weekly updates about the Calabrian Mafia and what's going down. Two successful Australian businessmen, one of whom is a political donor, have been named as bosses, capos, of a large international mafia organization. Fruit and vegetable millionaires Tony Madafferi, which you see his picture on the screen right now, and Diego Danny Luppino have been identified in papers filed in an Italian court as doing business with the Ndrangheta. Interestingly, the arrest warrants were for other individuals, and the business have not been accused of any crime in Australia or Italy. However, an anti-mafia force during Operation Efemos acquired phone tap records implicating them with senior Ndrangheta individuals. This led to a large investigation and the eventual arrest of 65 men for political corruption and extortion in the Ndrangheta Italian headquarters in Calabria. Dominic Forgione, an Australian, was one of those arrested. He was corrupted by the mafia group while holding political office in Calabria. The court papers also reference the Alvaro Mafia, who is active in Australia and Calabria. They are known to Australian authorities for their activities in Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney. Mr. Madafferi and Mr. Luppino emphatically deny all the allegations. Domenico, Mr. Luppino's son, said they are baseless. There's no suggestion that Mr. Madafferi or my father are involved in criminal activity. Only they have been named in the Italian Anti-Mafia Directorate's brief of evidence. The court papers reveal a different story of family power, mafia traditions, and an underworld crime network spanning the globe. They allege Mr. Luppino had dealings with Cosimo Cannizzaro, an old-timer Calabrian mafia boss who actually stayed at Mr. Luppino's house in Melbourne. Mr. Cannizzaro was placed on house arrest in Italy on February 26th. Some of the phone taps that were obtained have him claiming that Mr. Luppino kept insisting that he become a part of his successful Australian business enterprise and that Mr. Luppino knew full well who Mr. Cannizzaro was and his high position in the Ndrangheta. The authorities also have a recording from Mr. Luppino's home where 7 people were counting cash. The Italian police believe this was obtained under nefarious circumstances. However, the recording could just as well be interpreted as the cash having come from Mr. Luppino's successful fruit and vegetable business. Mr. Luppino's son, Dom, says, "They're just friends. They were friends as young boys. He loves my father." Mr. Cannizzaro is also on a recording stating how Mr. Luppino and other Australian mafia bosses asked for help involving a breach of honor in a relationship between a woman and an Australian mafia member. The mafia member was made to pay a dowry and was stripped of his standing in his organization. Since the 1960s, Diego Luppino has been a regular at the Dandenong market and is very well known in the produce business. Ben Corral, an Australian politician, said of Mr. Luppino in 2012 that it was his honor and privilege to present Diego Luppino with a lifetime membership in an Italian community association, which happened to be backed by Mr. Carroll. In yet another incident, Mr. Cannizzaro describes Tony Madafferi on a recording as Il Capo Bastone, the chief stick, a boss in the Ndrangheta Australian arm. In 2015, he also attempted to get Australian newspaper The Age to give up its sources on who revealed his political donations. Italian corporate records show that Mr. Madafferi, Mr. Luppino, and the now deceased Rosario Gangemi, a mafia boss, were in business together between 1988 and 2000. Over the past decade, Mr. Madafferi has also been making headlines by lobbying against the deportation from Australia of his brother, drug trafficker Francesco Madafferi. Mr. Madafferi said to a homicide detective in 1992 that "I am the man who is very well respected," and that Australian mafia boss Liborio Benvenuto was a very good man, very honest, and he was respected everywhere. Now, first of all, salute to About the Mafia by the new boss. That's where we got the article from, and you guys know about the Mafia. We've been messing with About the Mafia for a long time. So another installment of our Ndrangheta Weekly News, and I'm going to try to do a couple more Ndrangheta articles during the week because we have more than one. We have a couple, so I kind of want to get them out there while they're still current. So look out for that during the week, all right? So everybody have a good evening. Salute. Thank you for listening. Ndrangheta Weekly News, NWN, the only platform on YouTube to be talking about the Calabrian Mafia and what goes on around the world. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody have a good evening. Salute. We will talk soon.